Good morning, everyone. My name is Margaret Bruce. I am the Program Manager for the Local Government Sustainable Energy Coalition. And this morning we are glad to welcome the Center for Sustainable Energy in their presentation on Community Energy Program Design, how to maximize greenhouse gas emissions reductions, energy efficiency, and workforce development opportunities. We hope you will find this information useful and valuable. This webinar is being organized by the LGSEC and again in partnership with the Center for Sustainable Energy. As Program Manager for the Local Government Sustainable Energy Coalition, I am joined by Grace Kaufman, the Program Coordinator for LGSEC. I'll be your moderator. Grace will help facilitate the Q&A and the polling questions that will be seen in this webinar. A quick overview of today's agenda. Let me give you a brief overview of LGSEC for those of you who may not be familiar with us, and then I'll introduce our speakers and hand it over to them for their presentation. But before we get started, a couple of quick logistical items. Everyone will be muted except for our panelists. This will make sure that we have good sound quality and won't be interrupted by any sound issues. If you have questions, and we encourage you to submit questions, please use the Q&A function on the webinar. If you have any questions, I think there are ways of sending us a chat, and there are ways of sending your questions that way as well. We'll be summarizing those questions during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions that are not answered in the course of the webinar, we will summarize the answers to those questions and post them with the webinar materials after the webinar is concluded. The webinar is being recorded. It will be made available on the LGSEC website along with a PowerPoint presentation. A quick bit about the Local Government Sustainable Energy Coalition. We are a coalition of local governments and their allies from across the state of California. We're the only organization that represents local government specific energy and climate policy issues before the California Public Utilities Commission, the Energy Commission, the Air Resources Board, and we provide that information to our members in regular regulatory update calls, which are held monthly, quarterly members workshops and forums, and by resource sharing and information and knowledge sharing through a peer knowledge sharing network for our members on our website. The Local Government Commission, a California 501c3 nonprofit organization, is the program administrator for the Local Government Sustainable Energy Coalition, which is hosted by them. So if you have any questions or are interested in joining the Local Government Sustainable Energy Coalition, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Grace. Our contact information is there on our intro slide. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Sean Sevilla has over 10 years of experience in the energy sector, specializing in project management, project implementation, and stakeholder engagement. As a senior project manager in CFE's Distributed Energy Resources Technology Integration Team, Sean is responsible for working with project partners to deploy distributed energy resources. He oversees 2 multi-year distributed energy resource demonstration projects to bring to market innovative demand response and load management technologies in small and medium businesses and disadvantaged communities. Before joining CFE, Sean held positions at an engineering consulting firm and worked as an associate researcher for the Transportation Sustainability Research Center. Jonathan Hart is a senior specialist in distributed energy resources at the Center for Sustainable Energy. Jonathan provides regulatory and technical subject matter expertise to multiple research and development projects and the Self-Generation Incentive Program, or SGIP program. The research and development projects incorporate a suite of DER technologies and applications, including DER's wholesale market participation, microgrid development, automated demand response, electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and DER fleet management systems. Again, Grace will facilitate the Q&A, and I am now going to hand it off to our welcome presenters. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Margaret. Hello, my name is Sean Sevilla, Senior Manager for the Center for Sustainable Energy, and I will be facilitating our portion of today's webinar. Before we begin, we'd like to thank the LGSEC for their help and collaboration in the development of this webinar. For those who may not be familiar with us, the Center for Sustainable Energy is a nonprofit organization offering clean energy program administration and technical advisory services. For more than 20 years, we've worked nationwide with energy policymakers, regulators, public agencies, businesses, and others as an expert implementation partner and trusted resource. We have one simple mission: to decarbonize. CSC envisions a future with sustainable, equitable, and resilient transportation, buildings, and communities. This webinar is developed in conjunction with two projects funded by the California Energy Commission Electric Program Investment Charge. Today we will discuss marginal emissions, time of use, or TOU rates, and how they are tied to greenhouse gas emissions, demand response, and automated demand response, and the associated non-energy benefits, and how demand response can help achieve state-mandated greenhouse gas emissions and energy reduction targets for your agencies. As part of this webinar, we'll be discussing two projects. One is a project integrating energy efficiency and demand response, and the other is a workforce development project demonstrating the benefits of demand response, automated demand response, and various program designs. To start, we'd like to ask you for your participation in a quick poll. We will be asking the same question at the end of the webinar to gauge the effectiveness of today's discussion and learn how to improve our presentations for future audiences. We will launch the poll quickly, but the question is, how familiar do you feel with integrated demand-side management or load management? Please mark the checkbox next to your response directly on the screen.
All right, folks, we'll give you about 10 more seconds to vote. All right, the results are in. It looks like we have about a third of folks who are not familiar at all, a little over half that are somewhat familiar, and about 18% that's very familiar.
Great, thank you. The next question is, does your jurisdiction currently have a demand response procurement strategy or policy?
I want to give folks about 10 or 15 seconds to vote for that one. All right, it looks like we are about 42% at yes, that they do currently have a DR procurement strategy, and 58% at no, so about half to half.
Great, thank you. I'm going to start the discussion with some information around demand-side management and energy usage so that we're all speaking the same terminology. First, we want to review some basic concepts underlying load management, many of which you may have heard about before. So starting off, energy consumption is the total amount of energy or power used and is measured in kilowatt hours. Demand is the immediate rate of consumption, or how fast or the rate at which energy is consumed, and is measured in kilowatts. I like to think of it as in terms of how fast water is coming out of a faucet, like a fire hose or a low-flow faucet. And then lastly, tying the two concepts together is load shape, which is a graph of the variation in electrical load or demand versus time. Any point along the curve is the demand, and the total area under the load shape is the energy consumption. This all ties into the broader concept of demand-side management. Demand-side management, or DSM, is a multifaceted concept including several strategies for reducing energy consumption and using the most efficient or cheapest energy at the most efficient times. Within the realm of DSM, strategies range in complexity and engagement from simply using less energy by unplugging appliances and turning off unnecessary lighting. This is all called energy conservation, to shifting when you use the most energy to different times of the day, or load shifting, to the concept of demand response, which we'll discuss in more detail. Most agencies are probably already doing something that falls under energy conservation and energy efficiency, with some larger entities adopting peak management strategies. Ultimately, the end result is that the customer's load shape is modified so that they are using energy when it is least costly and produced from low emission sources of energy. And integrated demand-side management is a combination of multiple strategies. Demand response, or DR, is the change in electric usage by end-use customers from their normal consumption patterns in response to changes in the price of electricity over time. It can also be incentive payments designed to induce lower electricity use at times of high wholesale market prices or when system reliability is jeopardized. Either way, demand response reduces the instantaneous rate of consumption when an event is called. Future forms of demand response can also reward customers who use clean power when it's most plentiful, or reduce the use of power when it's produced by inefficient generators. So the question is, how does demand response help customers lower their environmental impact and costs? So first, we need to explain what a demand response event is. So this is an example of an exaggerated demand response event at a conceptual commercial building. Here an event is called between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. And the site reduced both interior lighting and HVAC demand for 3 hours. The key feature here is that there's an event. If the event was not called, the load shape or the demand at the site would have stayed the same as on the right. This is in comparison to some demand-side management strategies that change your load shape 24/7, 365 days a year, such as energy efficiency, load shifting, distributed generation, and other strategies. So typically, demand response has incentivized customers to reduce electricity consumption for reliability or cost reasons. But what we're going to go into next is how it can help achieve greenhouse gas emissions reductions. This all comes down to the concept of the marginal generator. In the state of California, natural gas power generators currently provide most of our flexible generation. Because of this, as electricity demand fluctuates, natural gas plants ramp up or down to meet demand. The last generator to operate is the marginal generator. Marginal generators also happen to be the most expensive and usually the most polluting generators. So reducing demand when electricity is most expensive also reduces our dependence on expensive or inefficient peaker power plants. Because of this, not all our hours are created equal for energy consumption. On the left, this is a graph of greenhouse gas emissions associated with energy use at different times of the day from a sample spring day in California. The change in greenhouse gas emissions is determined by which power plant turned on or off in response to changing load, and the marginal emissions increase or decrease corresponding to the emissions rate of the power plant. So if an inefficient peaker plant is the last generator to turn on, marginal emissions are high, and if the last generator to turn on is very efficient, marginal emissions are very low. In an effort to incentivize shifting energy use, some utilities offer time of use or TOU rates that vary according to the time, season, and day, and charge higher rates when demand peaks and lower rates when demand is low. So electricity rates can mirror these changing emissions as you saw in the previous slide, and here we're showing the rates superimposed on the emission rates. So if an agency implements a demand-side management program, then they can save money by reducing energy usage when electricity rates are at their highest, and also when marginal emissions are also at the highest. Demand response can then layer on top of this and further increase savings in greenhouse gas emission savings. And the key idea here is that it's no longer how much you consume, it's also very dependent on when energy is consumed. I will now pass the presentation off to CSC's policy specialist, John Hart, who will discuss energy efficiency, demand response, and how they are connected under demand-side management.
Hello, my name is John Hart. I'm with the Center for Sustainable Energy, as Sean alluded to, and I'm going to be talking about the concepts of energy efficiency coupled with demand response. And I'll go over that high level, but most of my presentation will be focusing on a case study that we're implementing, a project in San Diego, and with the goal of helping you understand how this might apply at your either businesses or local jurisdictions. So I wanted to first start off by discussing why would either a local government or a business want to implement both energy efficiency measures and or participate in demand response programs. And the biggest reason is to save or even to potentially earn money. What I mean by that is through energy efficiency, you are using less energy. As Sean was talking about with time of use rates, also you can use less energy at times when the price of electricity is more expensive. So instead of running certain equipment at times when the price of electricity is highest, you can run it at other times. Or you can have different technologies that help you use less energy. For example, more efficient lighting, insulation, or all kinds of different technologies you could use where you use less energy. And as a result of that, you save money on your electric bill every month. But then also demand response programs. These are programs that utilities manage, or through what I'll be talking about, the California wholesale market, where you can receive a signal by the utility to reduce your electricity usage at certain times of the day, and however much you reduce your energy usage, they actually compensate you for that. And so that's what we call an additional value stream, where you are making money essentially on reducing energy usage at those times. Another reason, if one of the question we had asked at the beginning, if your jurisdiction or business has any type of climate or greenhouse gas goals, another reason for implementing energy efficiency or participating in demand response could be to reduce pollution, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. You have your organization has less of an environmental footprint when you use less energy, and also when you reduce energy usage at times when you have the most polluting generators. And thirdly, another reason could be to improve grid reliability, as businesses across an area are able to reduce electricity usage overall, and especially at times when it's most expensive or maybe even most difficult to deliver to customers. You're helping to improve the reliability of the overall grid, and that is more or less a benefit for all customers of the grid, as their electricity receiving their electricity is more guaranteed, I should say. Okay, as an example, let's see. Sorry, my screen is not changing for some reason. I'm going to keep trying. Okay, there we go. I wanted to highlight a technology just as an example of a technology that works as both energy efficiency and demand response. This is one specific technology, but there's kind of an entire technology class of energy storage. This is a specific type of energy storage called thermal energy storage, and essentially it's an air conditioner that's full of ice or full of water, and you're able to use electricity to freeze the water at times when both the electricity is less expensive and when it's most efficient to do that. Typically at nighttime when temperatures are lowest, the compressors use less energy to create that ice. And so You're able to create ice at times when, again, it's less of an impact on your utility bill, and also it's more efficient to do so. Then in the middle of the day, as temperatures rise, when typically air conditioners would start turning on and providing cooling when the price of electricity is higher and when it's less efficient to provide cooling, these technologies, they pull heat from the building, melt the ice, and then that cools the air. They're able to provide air conditioning with essentially no energy usage during those times. So during those peak hours when the price of electricity is most expensive and when the marginal greenhouse gas emissions are highest, when the grid is most strained, you are able to reduce a substantial amount of electricity usage. So this is an example of both energy efficiency, because using less energy at night to charge, and then also demand response, of where you're able to target those specific hours that you want to reduce your energy usage. Okay, next screen. Now, I'm going to now focus on a case study. This is a project that we're managing at the Center for Sustainable Energy. And I want to first highlight that this is at a hotel in San Diego. However, this is applicable, these types of technologies or applications can be applicable generally across the board to any type of business, to a school, for a fire department, any type of local government agency. Another part of this same project is actually working with schools. I didn't want to highlight that in this presentation because it's more about batteries, electrochemical lithium-ion batteries that we're using. But the same, more or less, strategy that we're using for the hotels is also being used in schools, just with different technologies. And also, as a plug, later this year we are planning on doing another webinar with LGSEC where we'll be going into more detail on this project. So if you want to learn, I'm going to be doing just high level, we'll be going deeper. If you want to learn more about it, then later this year we'll be discussing it more. So at these hotels, what we wanted to do was, first of all, implement energy efficiency measures so they're using less energy, but then also implementing sensors and controls for different electrical appliances. And we did this throughout the buildings. So on major appliances such as air conditioners, pumps, fans, we installed controls and also sensors so we could detect how much energy they're using, and then also we can turn on or off certain appliances or reduce the amount of electricity that they're using. We put in smart thermostats in rooms, also sensors to detect when rooms are being occupied by people, and so we know more or less how or when to control the temperature in these rooms. So we installed this throughout the hotel and are collecting massive amounts of data from this. And from this data, we now have insight into which appliances are using how much energy and at what time. That's what this screenshot shows. The different colors, these are different appliances throughout the hotel, and so we're able to map out how much electricity is being used. And one of the things that I found very interesting and insightful from the hotel managers when we started this project, they were saying to us, our utility bill, looking at our utility bill, you need a Rosetta Stone to interpret this. We have no idea what's going on. We have no idea how we're using energy or what we're paying for. We just get this bill and we pay it every month. And when we showed them this, that you now have eyes on what is being used and when, and now you have control over that, that was very exciting for them because they could now start to understand why they were being charged so much energy, and then we were able to discuss different implementation measures where we can reduce the energy usage. Another insight from the hotels was their primary concern, or primary goal I should say, is to ensure that their customers are comfortable, that they have a good experience. They do not want to implement anything if it's going to compromise customer satisfaction. So all of these controls, everything we're doing needs to be and is behind the scenes where it does not impact the usage of the buildings and customer comfort. And again, even though this is at hotels, this can apply really at any type of facility where you want to have a better insight into your energy usage and be able to control that. So after gathering this data, we were then able to analyze how much we could reduce energy usage at peak times. So the top graph here, that shows, again, energy usage throughout the day. The bottom graph, that yellow portion, that's the amount of energy we were able to reduce during the day. So those, again, are peak hours when the cost of electricity is highest, when the grid is most constrained, when the marginal emissions rates of generators producing electricity are the highest. And we're able to reduce overall about 240 kilowatts of power and a substantial amount of energy for several hours of the day. And that provides utility bill savings for the hotels, but then also it provides an opportunity for the hotels to participate in what's called the California wholesale energy market, where we are essentially acting as a generator. We are saying we will reduce energy usage by this much, and as we do so, we get paid for that. So it's a value stream, and it's not a massive amount of money, but it's additional money that's coming in just for reducing energy usage. And again, the hotel operators, managers, they're not running around flipping switches on and off. This is all being managed by the controls and smart algorithms, and is being done to ensure that the customers still have a good experience at the hotels. Okay, just to finish off and then hand it over to Sean, this is one example of a specific type of technology class. There are many different types of technologies that could be used to both reduce overall energy usage and to reduce it at times that are most beneficial, to where you're able to participate in demand response programs. And I'll now hand it off to you, Sean.
Great, thank you, John. So to close the presentation, I would like to share some detail on the Automated Demand Response Workforce Development Project that CSE is leading. But more than that, go into programs available for public agencies to participate in demand response, and also really get into the benefits of participating in DR and implementing automated demand response controls at your facilities. And John did actually touch on this a little bit in his presentation, and he discussed some of the non-energy benefits that come with these controls. So throughout this, I want you to start thinking not just in terms of the immediate value of the controls, but also what else those controls can enable you to do at your facilities or for your agencies, either through visibility or through other benefits to you as facility managers. So the project that this work is based on is funded by the California Energy Commission. And it's framed largely as an initiative to develop a skilled workforce to properly install and activate grid-connected AutoDR controls, or automated demand response controls. But another objective is to engage public facilities and small, medium-sized buildings to enroll into automated demand response incentive programs and accelerate the installation of AutoDR communications equipment. So these objectives are in place with a few goals in mind, and some of these you may be aware of. One is to advance the goals of AB 758, which promotes increased energy savings in existing residential and commercial buildings, but also to achieve greater grid reliability and lower costs for ratepayers, develop a skilled workforce to commission and install AutoDR technology, increase economic opportunity in disadvantaged communities, and continue to support the deployment of AutoDR technologies. But energy usage reductions achieved through DR and other integrated demand-side management programs can also help put California closer to its goal of decreasing greenhouse gas emissions as stipulated by AB 32. And this project further strives to promote increased participation in and improved effectiveness of demand response and automated demand response programs as a tool to achieve greater grid reliability and lower costs for ratepayers. Sorry about that. So these objectives do align with customer and community benefits of demand response participation mentioned earlier by John. including using less energy and saving on operational costs through more efficient lighting and HVAC controls, receiving financial incentives and reducing costs by participating in demand response events, improving grid resilience for your local communities by shifting energy use to times when energy is most plentiful, and ultimately reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing the reliance on polluting peaker plants. There's actually a pilot being run right now in the Fresno area looking at how locally focused demand response programs can reduce the use of peaker power plants in communities that are impacted by those plants. I'll be able to share some more information about that project in the coming months. But there's also an additional benefit here, and that's increased control, automation, and visibility into your facilities. And that's really where the non-energy benefits come in. It's a common saying, you can't manage what you can't measure. One of the biggest benefits of these controls is they do give you increased insight into facility operations. So the question is, how do you participate or implement a demand response strategy? So first you have to look at demand response programs where enrollment allows you to respond to demand response events and receive financial incentives for shifting energy use. The second category are automated demand response technology incentive programs, and these are specifically designed to receive additional incentives.
So I'm not going to send all this. I'm just going to discard them.
Sorry, there's someone who's not on mute. Great, okay. And so the second bucket is technology incentive programs where you receive additional incentives specifically for installing technology to automate your demand response events. Much like John went over in his portion, the ultimate goal is really you want to go to an automated strategy. It increases the reliability of the programs, increases the likelihood you'll benefit from the programs. So starting with the demand response programs themselves, there are several options applicable to different customer types. And I'll just be providing a brief overview of each program, and we'll have more time for questions at the end of the presentation. And we've separated those different programs into sample customer types. And so starting with IOU customers, then CCA customers, and then finally direct access customers. The programs that are available to each one are a little bit different, and it comes down to whether or not you're receiving both generation and distribution services from the IOU. So starting with peak day pricing and critical peak pricing, this demand response pricing structure offers lower energy prices during the summer in exchange for pre-specified higher rates during certain hours for about 9 to 15 peak events per year. Event triggers can include system contingencies, which means just something failed, high average forecast temperatures, or high wholesale electricity prices. I believe that most programs currently use a forecast temperature as the trigger. So for example, if you know that the average temperature across the forecast region is going to be 80 degrees tomorrow, then there's going to be a critical peak pricing event or peak day pricing event. And you receive 24 hours notice or day ahead notice before an event is called. The second program is called the Capacity Bidding Program, or CBP. CBP is a program where a customer can offer a predetermined load reduction at a price they set, or ID or identify how much load they can curtail for a certain price. You receive a monthly payment even if no events are called, and if an event is called, you receive an additional payment for a reduction in energy consumption. And under this program, facilities have to work with a third party called an aggregator. It is possible to self-aggregate, but it's not very common. Some of the benefits of this program is that events it's a little bit more flexible how you participate in this program. It does tend to call more events, but you also tend to, the revenue stream from this program can be a little bit higher than some of the other programs, and it's a little bit easier to structure your participation in this program. Both of these programs, peak day pricing or CPP and capacity bidding, are eligible to receive AutoDR controls incentives. And I'll quickly touch on the last two. So one is base interruptible, and this program provides load reduction on a day-of basis when the California Independent System Operator issues a curtailment notice. This is generally only for very large commercial and industrial sites, like cement plants or like asphalt plants. But if you can participate, it is a good program. It does not qualify for AutoDR controls incentives, but it's good to mention because it is still a program offered by the utilities. And then lastly, and this ties into the project John was discussing earlier, and that's wholesale market participation. And here, demand response providers are able to bid aggregated customer demand reductions into the wholesale market. So again, here, similar to capacity bidding, you would work with a third party, also called an aggregator, to implement this strategy. Again, some of the benefits of this is it's more akin to continuous DR. There's a lot more flexibility in how you participate. You can participate year-round instead of just during the summer season. And so this would enable participation in the spring, winter, and fall months instead of just the summer months. There are also a few more programs, but I'm not going to discuss too much about them today because they have limited enrollment. And that's the DRAM, the supply side pilot, excess supply pilot, and the summer discount plan. So once you select the demand response program to participate in, and you are eligible to receive AutoDR controls incentives, there are a variety of technology incentive programs available to customers located in PG&E or SoCal Edison or SDG&E's service territories. And if you're a CCA customer, you can still access these incentives. The only caveat is you can do so only under the capacity bidding program. So the only one we're going to discuss today are the Express and Fast Track programs, because these are the best fit for most customers. These programs offer incentives to non-residential customers to cover up to 100% of the purchase and installation costs of AutoDR equipment after successful on-site verification of equipment installation and testing. It's important to note it's not just like the hard costs associated with installation. These programs can also cover some of the soft costs. So anything from like administrative costs, project management. The incentive programs are fairly broad in what they'll pay for. It is a separate application from an energy efficiency project. That is important to note, but the Fast Track and Express programs do streamline the application process. And we can get into that a little bit in the Q&A section. So a little bit more about some of the program features. So these programs offer simplified or deemed incentive calculators based on predetermined load shed strategies. 100% of the incentive is received upfront instead of split between an initial payment and performance and payments. So this really helps with the financials of a project. And the programs are structured around predetermined strategies. So dimming lighting, HVAC temperature resets, HVAC duty cycling. And so it's very easy to select your demand response strategy under these programs. They are limited to facilities with between about 100 and 499 kilowatts of maximum demand. And so equating to square footage, generally offices under 100,000 square foot. Between 50 and 100,000 square feet, you're probably looking at one of the customized programs that are more geared towards large C&I and more advanced technologies such as central plants, chilled water systems, more advanced HVAC systems. And so at that point, you're really looking more at a customized program offering. So I know there's a lot of different programs and a lot of different information about these, and so it can be quite confusing on what strategy you would move forward with as an agency. So when it comes down to actually choosing a program and implementing a project, there are some key factors to consider, and we've listed out some of them here. The key point, though, is that it's important to know there are programs that are better fit for each facility or each agency. And then while it's important to consider the barriers to implementing a demand-side management program that includes automated demand response or demand response, there are strategies to mitigate or resolve these barriers. Back to the project that we're working on now, part of the purpose of having a workforce development project is that this creates a trained workforce that can help address these barriers and support the implementation process for public facilities or small and medium businesses. And so having trained installers really helps here, and just being able to consistently communicate project goals and objectives throughout the whole process is very important. So getting a little bit into considerations for implementation, I would say probably besides the monetization of value streams and trying to reduce operational costs, the biggest benefit, or one of the biggest benefits of demand response or installing demand response controls is looking at enhancing your business operations or facility operations. And so when you do a controls retrofit, you're gaining enhanced visibility and enhanced control and some fault detection and analysis. And so you really get to see where you can do some retro commissioning or optimize how your lighting scheduling, your lighting schedules or lighting scenes across your facility. And that's, I think, where a lot of the true benefits of these technologies are. Demand response is I think, like a good feature on top of that helps allow implementation, but really it's the business operations and the facility operations where you're going to see a lot of benefits. When you implement a project, I highly recommend accessing technical support services. If you're in PG&E territory, they offer a fairly robust technical assistance program. Our project can also offer some additional technical support services and guidance when it comes to implementation of demand response. And this is, I think, really key, is that when you're going through project implementation, it's very important to combine retrofits wherever possible. So, for example, since the 2013 Building Energy Code, a lot of lighting retrofits would actually trigger a demand response requirement. So if you're doing a comprehensive lighting retrofit, that is the time to consider a demand response participation, because the marginal cost of adding on DR controls is fairly minor once you're already doing an advanced lighting controls installation. And the next is actually to be rather conservative in your automated demand response strategy. Again, I think occupant comfort is key here. And so the more conservative you are up front, the more likely you are to continue participating in demand response down the road. You don't really want to drastically impact your occupant comfort. And this also comes down to outreach. And so there's an education and outreach component to these programs, and you really want the occupants or whoever uses those buildings to be an active participant in your demand response strategy. And so they understand what's going on, they kind of see the benefits of it, and they can really engage with the program. And more so than most programs, it really does offer more opportunities to engage. And so that's why you put us up here. When you do implement a project, you want to combine it with an education and outreach messaging to your building occupants. There we go. So again, a lot of information here, and we do understand that these concepts can be confusing, and there's a lot of programs out there and a lot of nuances. And so because of this, it can be a little bit overwhelming to consider. So we can help mitigate this confusion and answer questions by conducting an initial high-level screening with your facilities to determine if the customer or if the facility is a good candidate for a demand response program or a technology incentive, and by working with jurisdictions to include demand response in their capital improvements. So if you're interested, we welcome you to contact one of our experts with any questions, or visit our website at energycenter.org to learn more about our mission, expertise, and other programs that we administer.
All right. Thank you, Sean and John, for presenting on all that information. It was quite a lot, and I'm going to give folks a couple minutes to kind of compress all that information and put it into a question. But we do have a couple of questions right now, and just so that to reiterate for all folks, the materials will all be posted to the LGSEC website, including the recording of this webinar. So the first question we have for Sean and John are, how have your clients or projects made the business case to their organization's decision makers?
John, you want to start with hotels and schools, and then
yeah.
go into the AutoDR specifically?
Yeah. So that's a very timely question. On Monday, we met with some of the managers at the hotel. The ones we've been working with were there, but going much higher up the chain because the hotels were recently sold from the previous manager, bought by another management property company. And so we're actually having to go through the process of signing customer agreement forms, that sort of thing. The biggest sell for all of this is the retail or the utility bill savings for two main reasons. First is that that's the highest potential revenue saving. The demand response programs, the revenue is not as much as the utility bill savings in these cases. And that's typically true. That's not always true, but that oftentimes is true, that you're more likely to save on utility bills than in a demand response program. So we needed to conduct a solid analysis of what the bill savings were, and that's really the main part of it. The demand response programs, it can get very confusing very fast, and so we're still going through the process of basically trying to explain what that even is to them, to the new property managers. And I think the biggest lesson that we as a team are learning is to keep it very simple. There are some things that are important to the programs, but not necessarily important for the management to understand. I think the big thing they want to understand is how much money are we saving? Is this practical? Are we going to ruin the customer experience in any way? And so we're trying to come up with ways of answering these questions by keeping it very simple, I guess. If that doesn't answer the question, I'd be happy to, if there's a follow-up question to that as well. Sean, did you have any ideas?
Yeah, no, I think the conversation, and I think if you work with the Green Business Network, the strategy is come for the energy or the cost savings, stay for the good feelings. To some extent, I think demand response is similar, or automated demand response. So it starts off looking at the value streams and the value proposition directly. And so that's looking directly utility bill savings. A lot of it's like, how do you respond to these time of use rates? How do you manage bill savings when your rates change? How do you, or the utilities or whoever is providing your energy implements a new program? So demand response can help mitigate those impacts for a facility, and it gives you a lot more control over how you utilize your energy, either by participating in demand response events or using those same controls to automate your response to time of use rates, which I think is where things are going. The shift in the market right now towards quote unquote continuous DR, which means that demand response can happen at any time of any day in response to variations in what's happening at the system level on a minute-to-minute basis. And so that's really the future value proposition. But in the here and now, it's really about like demand charge management. It's about managing spikes in energy prices. And it's about, once you get past the value proposition, looking at the non-energy benefits. And so that's using cleaner energy, meeting your greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets if you have them. And then when it comes to the facilities, it's really getting additional insight and control over the facilities and those other non-energy benefits. And so DR is just one feature of an advanced control system for lighting or for HVAC systems. But for example, if you implement smart thermostats or occupant controlled smart thermostats across a variety of facilities, very often those same systems come with a cloud-based interface where you can go and see the set points across your entire portfolio of buildings. You can see energy use. You can see scheduling problems. And the AutoDR controls incentives can help pay for those additional features. The programs are really just to promote demand response, but there's also a lot more you get at the same time with those same controls. And right now, the AutoDR controls incentive, I think, is one of the few incentives that will pay for these advanced controls of the facility. And so it's really focusing on those additional benefits you get and the additional visibility you're going to get into a facility or into a portfolio of facilities.
Awesome, thank you. And we have another question, and it reads, I understand that the ADR program doesn't impact the customer's experience negatively, but what does the ADR program look or feel like, such as dimmer lights, less cool air, etc.? Where are the invisible savings coming from?
I can start with that one and kick it off to John. It can actually impact the customer's experience, and that's why I mentioned that you want to start conservatively with your program. That if you're very aggressive in your strategies, that there can be occupant comforts, which is why it's important to be very clear about what your goals and objectives are in these programs from the get-go. If you are okay and your occupants are like okay with a very aggressive strategy, like I've been pushing a very aggressive strategy at our headquarters down in Southern California, that's one thing. But if occupant comfort's your key criteria, then you do want to be very cognizant of what your occupants are going to experience in the facility. That being said, though, most demand response events are very, if they're implemented well, are almost imperceptible. And so when it comes to dimming lighting, with most new lighting systems, if you dim lights 20 to 30%, and then the way that these lighting systems dim, it's actually imperceptible. We have some test stands where we did this as part of our workforce development, and the only way you can tell that the lights are dimming is if you take a light meter out and you stick it underneath the lighting fixtures, and then you can actually see the slow dimming over a period of a minute or two. And that all ties back to most spaces are actually overlit, and the way we use computers and desks now is a little different than we did years ago. And so when it comes to lighting, the dimming and the DR event is actually very hard to detect. And then in HVAC can come as a variety of different experiences. So generally, if it's a temperature reset, then you're increasing temperature space by like 2 to 3 degrees. That usually happens because the buildings almost act like a battery. There's a lot of thermal mass in the building. And so the actual temperature change, once you change the set point, happens very gradually over a period of 10 to 20 minutes. And so because of that, most building occupants, in fact, the vast majority don't really detect the change in temperatures across that range. And a 2-degree temperature change is actually within it's within the range where the human body can actually detect it very well. But it is still an impact, so it's important to have the conversation with occupants. There's also a strategy to mitigate that, and that's using what's called pre-cooling. And so if you know there's going to be a demand response event, say from like 2 to 5 p.m., between like 12 to like noon to 2, you gradually pre-cool the space by an extra degree or two, and then once the demand response event hits, the building will coast throughout that event, and so you can actually maintain occupant comfort at a reasonable temperature throughout the event. So there are ways to mitigate that. And then to the question of where invisible savings come from, it comes from shifting your energy use and when you use energy. So during a demand response event, market prices for electricity are extremely expensive compared to what it's like during the rest of the day. And so just using a little bit less energy during those times is where all those savings come from. And it stacks up. And same thing with shifting energy use. If you pre-cool, you're going to be using energy when it's a little bit cheaper. And then you can coast through the time of the day when energy prices are extremely expensive.
All right, great. Thank you, Sean. And I am going to pass it on over to Margaret, who will close us off.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you, Grace. And thanks to all of our participants for joining us today. We hope you found it worthwhile and valuable. As a reminder, all of the material, the PowerPoint slides, and the recording will be available on the Local Government Sustainable Energy Coalition website. And if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to send those to us. We will reply to the questions that may not have had a chance to be answered in our conference materials or our webinar materials posted on the website. We will also be sending a brief SurveyMonkey survey to our attendees, and we hope you'll take just a couple minutes to share your thoughts with us. Again, thank you so much, and that concludes our webinar.